This episode is supported by ArcIT Section Cut, the interactive virtual conference from our friends at Monograph, and Twinmotion. You'll hear more about them later in the show. Welcome to the Troxel Podcast. I'm Evan Troxel, and a bit of housekeeping up front. I'll apologize here in advance that some of the audio and maybe our connection in this episode wasn't operating at 100%, but my team has done an incredible job of getting it as intelligible as possible. Robert and I discussed whether or not just to scrap it and try the whole thing again, but if you've ever tried to have the same conversation twice, you know it's just never going to be the same. And I'll take some liberties and speak for Robert here, but I don't think he nor I are very good actors, so that memorization thing is probably out the window. So we decided to let it be, and I'm glad we did, because there are some really great things in this recording that just wouldn't have been repeatable. My guest in this episode, I foreshadowed his name a moment ago, is Robert Yori. Robert is the director of VDC operations at EnTech Engineering in New York City. He's also the program manager and executive committee member of the Design Technology Summit, otherwise known as DTS, which is a pre-conference track of the annual Built North America event, which further is part of the Digital Built Environment Institute, aka DBEI. That's where we met. I've been to 2 DTS events in 2018 and 2019, and one virtual event earlier this year. The first one that I attended was in St. Louis, and the second was in Seattle. This year's are online and ongoing throughout the year. I did end up making summary videos on my YouTube channel about those in-person events and kind of key takeaways, and also showing the cities that they were hosted in, which I think is always an important part of an event. And I've added links to those in the show notes. They were fantastic events, and I've been wanting to have Robert on the podcast for a long time to talk about their importance and their impact, both on me and the firm that I was working for, but also on the industry. We get into that in the episode. The main topic of conversation in this episode is really around those DTS events, overarching themes, using empathic techniques when working through ways to engage leadership in their respective adoption in their continued digital transformations, how to share and cross-pollinate those ideas to elevate the profession together, technology as a means to an end, working as a group to advance ideas across institutional and corporate silos, and more. It really is about connecting the dots. I had a really great time talking with Robert, and I hope to do it again on this podcast, hopefully with a better connection next time. So without further ado, I bring you Robert Yori. Robert Yori, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on the show, but also really great to see you again. It's been a while since it's been in person.
Thanks so much, Evan. Yeah, it's. I think the last time we saw each other was in Seattle in 2019.
Right.
In person.
Right.
At DTS.
Right.
And yeah, no, thanks for the invitation, and really looking forward to our chat.
So DTS is Design Technology Summit. It's kind of a subset of DBEI/Built/ there's this conference has had a few names over the years.
there's a whole bunch of names. I will do my best to disambiguate it to the extent that I understand it. DBEI is the organization, Digital Built Environment Institute. The conference that they put on is Built. So they say Built Week often. Like when we had the in-person sessions, they would call it Digital Built Week or Built Week, and that was the week's worth of events.
Right.
So those events consisted of Built, the sort of the flagship conference that that people know. It used to be called RTC. You might know it by a different name. So it encompasses that, which is typically 3 days, and it encompasses some of the pre-events. There's one called Data Day, which focuses on data, as you might imagine. There's one called Building Content Summit, and then the Design Technology Summit, which is the event that I'm most involved with. So those are the pre-events, which happen a couple of days before the proper Built conference, and then put it all in a week.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for that little history because I think it does help set this framework. And I have participated in multiple DTSs. I don't want to call it the DTS Summit because that would be redundant, but it is that I found it extremely valuable. And the reason why, coming from a digital practice kind of position in a company and talking with peers and colleagues and other firms in similar like cross-sectional, layers within these companies, it was fantastic. And it's great to build that network and to be able to just talk about very openly about struggles and successes and things like that. I imagine as one of the people who organizes that, you guys, your team and you are thinking about ways to leverage those kinds of connections.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can give you a little bit of a sort of the genesis story of DTS. Some of it predates me. I'm not sure by how much, but I'll tell you the backstory. So it's really an intent to elevate those conversations. So if you go to a conference, sometimes the content in the conference, like classes, are good, and sometimes you get more value out of the conversations you have in the hallways after the classes. Right. Night when you're at dinner. So DTS really was, we aspired to elevate those hallway conversations that we would have amongst design technology managers, digital design managers, whatever you wanted to call them.
A lot of titles. Yeah, there's a lot of titles there, but similar.
Similar shared set of responsibilities. It started about, I think the first one was in 2013 that we held in Vancouver. Back when it was still called RTC, the conference itself. But the idea was to elevate those conversations in the hallway. So, I would get out of a class and I would see Robert Manna, who's the chair of DTS. I would see Robert, and I would see a couple of other people. And we'd all kind of start talking, just to swap stories, understand maybe how Robert's company was working, how solving particular problems, or let's say there was some new feature or new functionality that came out in software, and we were kind of wondering if anybody had used it successfully or if somebody had tried it out, if they found a way to implement it to of value. So these kind of conversations you have at the conferences. Right?
Yeah.
So, and typically it's folks and sometimes if you're on the conference circuit, you see those people on the conference circuit, and you develop kind of a regular dialogue from event to event. DTS was really an event that we wanted to elevate those conversations, take them out of the hallway, and make a dedicated event around that sort of collaborative conversation and problem sharing and problem solving. My involvement in DTS came before the initial event, so I can't remember exactly when, but I had come to a point where I was giving a lot of presentations at some point. I had come to the realization that I had many more questions than I did answers. Most of the presentations that you end up submitting, some of the ones that you end up giving, a lot of them are about solutions or answers that you have. How to set up a model for large projects, how to handle a CAD file. I don't know, some mundane stuff, some elevated stuff. But the idea is, many of those classes that I would attend, sometimes that I would present at, were about solving particular problems. So they were chock full of answers. I felt like it. With my role that I was in, I was at SOM at the time. I had a lot more questions about our digital design group and how it was structured, and what the group meant and how it related to the projects and how it related to IT and sort of where it fit in the organization. And I think this was, again, this was in, let's say, 2011, 2012. And I think technology, specifically BIM at the time, was very much in more of an opportunity sort of phase. I think things have been codified over the years. And there are much more commodified ways to think about BIM on projects today than there were 10 years ago. And so me and Robert and a bunch of other folks, we were all trying to figure this out. We were all kind of relying on each other because typically, in any organization, there's only a few people that are oriented that way, technology oriented. So you leverage your council of peers. That council of peers generally exists among architecture of a variety of firms. So that's what we wanted. We wanted to create a place for the folks from all the firms to come and have those conversations. There was a fair amount of venting sorry, let me back up. So I had realized I had all these questions and not so many answers. So what I ended up doing for Autodesk University one year is I proposed, I think they called them roundtables. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And I called it "What's in Your Digital Design Group?" Because at the time, I think there was a bank that had a "What's in Your Wallet" campaign for the credit card you carried. So really, everybody I talked to, I would ask them the same set of questions. How's your group organized? Are you billable? What's the structure like? Do you report to IT? Are you reporting to the architecture group? All the questions I'm sure that you've asked, that we've discussed in the past, and so forth. So I would have loved to have given a lecture on that stuff, but I didn't have any answers. I had lots of questions.
Right.
So I proposed a roundtable.
Yeah.
And I think Robert was either in my session. Sorry, Robert, I don't. Was either in my session or heard about my session, and approached me and told me that they were putting together this idea for DTS inside of RTC. He asked me if I would be interested in participating as an organizer. I said, yeah, of course. I got plenty of questions left. So that was the genesis of my involvement and DTS itself, was to create that place for everyone to ask each other questions and for us all to solve those problems jointly. They were questions that we all had of the industry, not so much that any individual firm had.
Right.
So strength in numbers.
Yeah. With this idea of this kind of group of people within these companies and this roundtable then at AU, I mean, that's what DTS, except it's many roundtables, right? It's like you've invited these different leaders and people within the firm to come together and share and swap stories of adoption and, all these things that you just mentioned, and solve problems. How are you organized? Should we organize like that? What are the pitfalls? What are the benefits of such organization, et cetera? That's what DTS is on, I don't know, I don't want to say on steroids, but that it's at a bigger scale, right? Because there's probably, how many tables in the room? Maybe 12, 15 tables in the room with 8 people at each one of them. And it's pretty fantastic.
It's great that you have the Seattle DTS in your memory, because that was our largest one by far.
Mm-hmm.
We had 70 some odd people in the room, which was fantastic.
The one before that, I think, was St. Louis, right? I went to that one as well.
I did not make St. Louis,
okay,
so I can't really tell you how that went. I had a project conflict and I couldn't make it. But we had been as large as 75. I think there were about 40 or 50 in St. Louis, if I'm not mistaken. What I remember, being told,
probably,
and it's been as small as 12 people, and it's been as large as 75.
Okay, so
it's really designed. We initially thought of it as a whole room conversation. I think because at first we were very specific about who we thought would benefit from such a conversation. So we initially thought that it was leaders from large architecture and design firms, perhaps engineering firms, in the early days, and then over time we thought, okay, well, as long as we get the right people in the room, the discipline doesn't really matter as much. But initially it was large firms, largish firms, have specific problems, certainly around sort of the pragmatic stuff around collaboration and latency and sort of what it means to work across the world, and how you can spread knowledge in those ways. So that was our initial focus for the large organizations. But we evolved over time to be a little more broad in scope. And I think it's good. It's great to have the different voices in the room. I think, if I can say this as a personal observation, certainly I was very interested in hearing the answers of the people in the room, certainly for my own benefit, because I would like to know what other people are thinking, and hopefully others felt that way too. But certainly we've evolved into a place where we have a more broad representation across the industry. So now we have architecture, engineering, and some construction firms. We've invited some owners in on occasion. In Seattle, you might remember, we had Phil Bernstein join us, which was really, really wonderful. We sort of brought in the academic side,
right.
And of course, as always, contributed wonderfully to the conversation. And Chris Parsons as well from
Knowledge Architecture.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and of course, if you know Chris, he always brings something special to the conversation as well. So I was really happy, at the last in-person event. We had really seemed to find a wonderful mix of a really nice cross-section of the industry and sort of pulling back into academia as well.
Yeah, and I think what I get most out of those. I was laughing earlier about when you said I had more questions than answers. I was going to say that's just a side effect of age as well. I think the older we get, the more we realize what we don't know, right? And so there's just more questions. There's more things to know about, and you find yourself constantly in awe of what people know about and how, I think in these types of settings in particular, how open people will be about sharing the information in a very kind of vulnerable way that it's like, coming from traditional practice, I'm sure this would be looked down upon. This is our secret sauce. This is our intellectual property. And what you come to realize in these settings is, man, there's a lot of shared struggles there. And so I take a lot of comfort in that, knowing, I remember like in Seattle, and Dane Stokes, who's been on the show, he said, show of hands, who's effectively using AI in their practice right now? And like no hands went up, right? But yet it's the buzzword and it's everybody expects it, and the marketing departments are pushing for it, and they're actually telling everybody that we're using it and for all these great things. And then it's like, when it actually comes down to it, who in here feels like this is a successful part of your business? And it's like no hands. And it's like, okay, thank God. It's not just me.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And that was really the initial spirit, right? So we can all talk about this. I think, we can all speculate on, whatever the current, buzz technology is and what it means, and how we might optimistically think that it can improve practice. And we can do plenty of that in the room also. But I think there's a real candor, which I really appreciate in that room. There's a real candor amongst the attendees, and a willingness to share that I really appreciate. Again, it's that little circle of friends and acquaintances that used to hang out in the hallways. We've made that into an event, which is something to be proud of. I think
it's valuable for sure, and I can't thank you guys enough for the way that the information is shared in that time, and it is just enough. It's digestible. You can take it back. You can actually employ much of the learning. It's not like an overflowing amount of information and it's a daunting task. It's like, okay, here's what I'm going to take away from that and work on, and bring back some thoughts and ideas about it to the next one. And I think now you guys have shifted in how this works. Obviously, COVID influenced, but now it's this whole idea of dialogues and kind of continuing the conversation over a longer period of time, where instead of having kind of this really tight set of 2 or 3 days, now those 3 days are spread out over time. I think you guys have it spread out into 3 or 4 meetings that are,
right,
once a quarter or something like that.
That's right. We haven't settled on so last year we did DTS online, like everyone did in 2020, and we were faced with how to shift an in-person event into an online event, and how to be able to keep the content engaging, so that people just don't look away from their screen. How to make sure that they stay engaged in the conversation, how to make sure that they want to stay in the event all day, or we chunked it down. So we had all these problems to solve. So we did that. Those were still more formal, structured events, and I think part of the philosophy was, at least in year one, the online event, we wanted to make it a little more structured than our in-person events. Our in-person events, Seattle was fairly well structured, because I think I've been program manager for the last couple of years, and so I can sort of share my thoughts on how we structured Seattle and how we structured the online event this year. Mm-hmm. Seattle was the largest, as I mentioned, the largest attendance that we had, and it's one thing to have a loose conversation with 10 people in the room. It's quite another to try and have a loose conversation with 75 people in the room. So I felt that a little bit more structure would improve the quality and diversity of the conversation. You don't want, if you're not careful, someone may make a statement and then 4 people will take the mic after them and say, I agree 100% with what so-and-so just said, and here are all the reasons why I agree. And
Piling
And
on.
the next person, they say, you know what, me too.
Yep.
So I'm glad they want to feel comfortable to speak. But I think, in an attempt to keep the conversation diverse, different viewpoints, I think, we tried to put a little bit more structure in to Seattle. And I felt the same way about the online event. Again, online, you're at home, you've got a million, or somewhere, you've got a million distractions. You can very quickly look away to your email if something's just not engaging you at the moment. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of other possible ways to sort of peel out of the conversation. So again, I felt a little bit more structure would help, and to really invite all the participants to engage to the greatest degree possible. So we did 3 sessions in 2020. One was the kickoff. It was a panel discussion about the sudden shift to working not in an office, whether it's working from home or somewhere else remotely, in an industry that is largely, by tradition, been focused on a bunch of people gathering in one spot, huddled around a table with a set of drawings or a model, whatever. How does that, and there's a long tradition of wanting to keep it that way in a lot of firms as well. Clearly, this shift wasn't a voluntary one. Mm-hmm. So the panel discussion was really focused around some key questions about how that shift happened, in the panelists' firms, if they had been planning to support remote working in the past, and how that came to be, how that came to fruition. Were there challenges that you needed to meet quickly that you didn't expect to meet? What were those? How did you make it through those? And then also kind of looking ahead, what do you think might be more permanent? Some of the things that you adopted. Is there anything that you see that has a great deal of longevity beyond this remote working phase once we all get past the pandemic? So there was that series of questions, and then we had sort of an externally facing series of questions. Given that we've switched to a more digital way of working, not just because digital is more portable, what are those opportunities, if any, that you see in a way to transform the way that you engage with your clients, or change the services that you offer, or expand the services that you offer, or offer either a different set or pursue new markets, or externally, what might that mean for your firms? So our panelists consisted of Natasha Luthra, who's Director of Innovation at Jacobs, Thomas Lozigo at Clayco, Brian Skripak at Ken Design, and Alexandra Pollock at FX. So they were very helpful in sort of sharing their reflections in shifting to working remotely, and sort of pontificating about what that might mean for the future. And then the following 2 sessions were really us asking the same questions in a roundtable session. We said, okay, you heard from the panelists. Hopefully they got your mind thinking about how your firm and how your organizations have done this shift. So, let's start these questions. So we structured them in a series of, let's call them vignettes. Mm-hmm. They were a series of perspectives, and we structured those around different roles in firms. So you might remember in Seattle, we adopted something called the 6 thinking hat structure.
Right.
And that 6 thinking hat structure was really designed to sort of prevent the pile on. Right? Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. So instead of answering as a design technology manager any question, what's the best thing about what's the greatest advantage that you have found with remote working? And each 6 thinking hat was designed from a different perspective. So like one of them was the eternal optimist, one was the pragmatist, one was the pessimist, one was, so the idea was that you wouldn't necessarily respond in your voice. You would have to assume a personality and try to figure out what that perspective would bring to the table.
Personality traits that everybody deals with in these firm settings, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And I thought it was a really interesting way to sort of, stretch our minds to think not only about how we react, but how others in the firm, would react. And, as design technology folks, we have to, as you said, right, we have to deal with all kinds and all different personalities. Right. So to better understand those perspectives, I think is invaluable.
You have the optimistic designer and the practical project manager. Yeah. I mean, and it really is a useful tool. I love how you guys did that, because it did give that empathetic part to the equation to say, like, okay, yeah, we know your experience. But now imagine if you're somebody, put yourself in somebody else's shoes and be that person when you're thinking about this question and how you guys might approach it from that
Respond as that person.
Right.
So we took that idea a step further in the online series, and we sort of categorized a series of roles. We had, pretty much what you just said: the project manager, the firm owner, the firm principal, a junior architect, a design architect, and someone who's responsible for production. And we asked a series of questions, or we proposed a series of statements. I learned this from Phil Bernstein. I have to give him credit for this, about sort of proposing a statement, being provocative to initiate a conversation, and say, "Here's the statement. The best thing about digital workflows is the ability for us to collaborate more effectively." I don't know. I'm just making this up right now, but you put that up there, and then you say, "Okay, group, do you agree with that, or do you disagree?" I don't care which one you do. I mean, in some ways, I like it if you disagree, because generally that draws a bigger rise out of people. But if you disagree, tell me why. Tell me where that statement's wrong. Tell me, what that statement should be. And not only don't agree or disagree with me as you, agree or disagree with me as a firm leader. Agree or disagree with me as a designer. Agree or disagree with me as a project manager. And think about it from that perspective. Again, in an attempt to sort of really work on that. I suppose it's an empathic approach.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things that I agree 100% completely, Robert.
There's only two of us, so that's
okay. The whole idea of people going to a technology-heavy conference, I think that there's kind of a stigma associated with that, which is you guys are going to talk about programs. You're going to talk about applications. You're going to talk about workflows. You're going to talk about interoperability, and you're going to talk about the latest content management and data and this and that. But what we're actually talking about here are much bigger things than that. And it really puts the technology as an enabler to accomplish these things. And the way that we've talked about it before is it's a means to an end. It's not the end, though, right? I think the stigma that comes along with a conference like this is it's a bunch of nerds going to talk about tools, and the tools are the only thing they care about. And that is not the case at all. And that's what I really want to emphasize about DTS in particular, and the value that it provides, I feel, is that when you're there, you're rarely talking about tools at all. You're talking about much larger concepts that everybody is struggling with. You're talking about culture and adoption and efficiency and taking architecture to another level and how you can help make that happen. And there's so many concepts that I think really get people, you can see that their passion actually lies in that. And the tools then come in under all that to help fulfill those larger questions and problem sets.
I can't tell you how thrilled I am that you say that. First of all, I don't think I could have put it as eloquently as you, so thank you for that. But that's exactly the goal that I've had. It's one of my goals for DTS. Understanding what it takes to move from a technology leader to a leader in an organization, even if your role still is technologically based. When I was starting out in the industry, there was I forget the joke, I'll botch it, but the idea is like if you're a project manager, you manage projects. If you're an HR manager or personnel manager, you manage people. If you're a CAD manager, you manage drawing files. It was like this kind of wah-wah.
Right.
So this is something that I think about a lot. Certainly, what does it mean to be a leader that works on technology, works in technology, as opposed to a leader that works in any other aspect of practice? I was fortunate enough to be involved with AIA's technology and architectural practice knowledge community for many years. And the year that I was chair in 2016, and we have this thing with all the other knowledge communities called KLA, Knowledge Leadership Assembly or something. And so you get to meet sort of the leaders from all the knowledge communities, whether it's sustainability, architecture for justice, building performance, technology, and a whole range of others. You get to talk to them. And that was kind of when the light bulb went off in my head that in order for me to talk about technology in ways that resonated with the AIA membership, technology was the means to an end. I mean, it's great to nerd out, with technology. I'll be the last person to tell you that's a bad idea. And there's plenty of that, when you want. But I think too often that sort of bigger picture is overlooked. Oftentimes, I think we've all experienced it in some ways. If someone hears that you're involved in technology, they've immediately sort of categorized you as being one of those, nerdy folks who can't really manage to communicate except for in the technology sphere. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a real challenge. Maybe not for everybody personally, but that perception. So I think in order to be able to stretch one's mind, to be able to think about things from other perspectives, let's say in practice, or other perspectives in general, and then be able to talk about your area of expertise, if it's technology, for example, in ways that are meaningful to those people. Technology, as you said, being used to an end. Yeah. And that's something that I've really tried to further in DTS, and we've all tried to further there.
Yeah, and I think that is a root of a lot of the questions that come up over and over again as maybe new people filter into those roles and they start to question structure and how things are set up and why they're set up that way. And are you a part of IT? Are you a separate group from IT? Are you your own profit center within the larger organization? How is your team made up? Do you guys do training too? Like, do you guys manage all of the license? Like, who does what? What's the division of labor? And it's interesting because you start to think about those questions, and they are questions of operations and leadership and HR and all. It really is getting into this. I don't know if layer is the right word that runs throughout a company, but like a technology layer is much deeper than people give it credit for being. And one of the things that used to come up all the time was, I can't believe a new version of this or that comes out every single year, and all you care about is it's like, okay, well, go ahead and deliver the project without it. Like, how is the business? And it never became more apparent than when COVID happened. Right? How does the business survive without technology? Right. It would be very hard. Let's just say, I don't want to say that it couldn't, but it very close to couldn't. And so you start to think about how deeply ingrained this is into the way all businesses work nowadays. But I think we still come from, the royal we, as the architects who've been around for a very long time, still kind of think of it as this thing that's just a very thin layer on our practice, when it's not. It's deeply, deeply rooted in the people who show up to conferences to come to talk about these problems and challenges and opportunities care so much, and they care so much about the profession and how they can use the talents and the tools that they have to help make those things be better, so that the architecture and the engineering can change the world.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
That's the theme of this episode is agreement. This episode of Troxel Podcast is made possible by Twinmotion. What if you could visualize your building in a couple of clicks, remove months from the design process, or create a bridge between stakeholders to solve problems before they even come up? Our friends at Twinmotion offer simple, real-time visualization for architects. Their technology lets you view and edit your scene on the go in the same pixel-perfect quality as the final rendering. Twinmotion seamlessly integrates with other tools like SketchUp and Revit, transforming your BIM or CAD models into high-quality images, panoramas, VR videos, or presentations. Sound complicated? Well, what if I told you that Twinmotion enables anyone to present the biggest ideas in the easiest way possible, regardless of previous CG experience? To download your exclusive free trial, head to twinmotion.link/TRXL. That's twinmotion.link, not .com, .link/TRXL. Monograph. Monograph is building a community of like-minded firm owners and operations leaders who are looking for solutions that align with their firm's values. On top of that, Monograph is building the only cloud-based practice operations software built exclusively for architects by architects. Monograph's easy-to-use and beautifully designed software allows you and your team to know in near real time whether you are on pace to deliver a project on budget. With Monograph, you and your team can plan project schedules, budgets, role assignments, and team members all in one place. The best part of Monograph? It doesn't require a degree in finance to use. To experience the difference today, sign up for a free trial at monograph.com. And to underscore their commitment to the community, on August 12th, Monograph will be hosting their first ever virtual conference. It's called Section Cut. This one-day event brings firm owners, operations leaders, and project leaders together to learn from success stories and workshops, all with a goal of improving their business. Reserve a seat at Section Cut today by visiting sectioncut.com. And ArcIT. One of the things I really got out of the conversation that I had with Boris, the CEO of ArcIT, was that they are dedicated to the design community. They have 3 guiding principles listed on the front page of their website, and I wanted to dig in for a moment into those. The first one is that they are committed to being the expert. You've hired them to understand their business and to make the best IT decisions for you. So when you work with ArcIT, you will only work with industry-experienced IT professionals. The second guiding principle is that they are responsive. They understand that in the architecture and design world, deadlines are everything. If you have an issue and you have a deadline coming up, they'll find a solution. And the third guiding principle is that they are proactive. They'll always make sure that your systems are up to date so unplanned issues won't come up, as well as meet with you regularly to explain new technology advances within the industry. So, as business owners and architects, how often do we think about our IT provider? Typically, only when things go wrong. And for many of us, unfortunately, this happens too often, especially with the latest emphasis on remote work. ArcIT, however, is a very different kind of company. They specialize in serving architecture, design, and engineering firms, and their goal is to help you use technology as a competitive advantage. This means that they understand your technology stack, and they won't waste your time and money learning how your tools work within your process. Combine that with industry-leading response times, proactive remote hardware management, and solid disaster recovery and backup solutions. That's something that everybody should be thinking of, honestly. And enterprise-grade security management. And yet, above all, these are just table stakes for a solid IT company. ArcIT goes a step further. They become your strategic partner when it comes to planning, budgeting, and integrating new technology into your business processes. So all of this sounds expensive, right? Nope. Because ArcIT is highly specialized for our industry, their pricing is on par or in some cases even lower than other IT providers. ArcIT is transparent and even publishes the pricing right on their website. Speaking of their website, there's also something else you should check out when you're there, and that is their Design Under Influence blog and video series. Again, adding value to IT type solutions across industry, all good stuff. So your business deserves a competent, responsive, and proactive IT partner. Reach out to my friends at ArcIT for a free consultation. So go to getarchit, that's getarchit.com, arc like architecture in the middle, and click Work With Us. So thanks very much to ArcIT for sponsoring this episode of the Troxel Podcast. And now let's get back to our conversation. So where does DTS go from here? I mean, I know the one, it was supposed to happen in San Diego, I believe, a couple of years ago. That's when it got the kibosh, and then it went online. So have you guys run through the entirety of your online series yet, or what's yet to happen?
We have. So there was a built online that happened. I guess it was almost a month ago now. Come to think of it, it was they planned a single virtual conference this year that spanned a bunch of different time zones. It was basically a 3-day marathon.
Instead of doing like the Australia, the Europe, the North America. Okay.
Exactly. They had held one virtual event. I mean, arguably it was multiple events because you had speakers from different time zones and schedules coordinated that were sympathetic to the time zones of their intended audience. But really, it was kind of like reminds me when I was a kid, I used to watch the Jerry Lewis telethon, over Labor Day. And it was kind of like that, like every time I would turn on my computer, there would be something else on, some other talk on. So that happened a month ago, and that was a single virtual event. My understanding, as of a month ago, that their DBEI is still targeting an in-person event in Australia, I think in September. Okay. So I haven't checked in with them for a little while. We're all sort of catching our breath after the the virtual event.
And to be clear, like this is your side gig. This is
this
is not your day-to-day thing. So,
no, I have a day job too.
You're like, I haven't checked in on my day job in a couple of months, so
no. Yeah, that's a whole other story. No, this is a side thing. So they are still planning on hosting an Australia, an in-person Australian event. I know that there are looser plans. There are goals to have in-person events. I expect, this is not the voice of DBEI, this is my own speculation, that there will be some level of hybridization in these events, although I don't know how.
Yeah.
Again,
right. Tough problem.
Not me speculating as DBEI, but I think, as we've all learned, having resources available to you either during or after the event, follow up or just review, I think are tremendously helpful. So I would imagine that we will continue that tradition.
Mm-hmm.
For DTS, DTS was not part of the worldwide DBEI event. I think the concentration was really just trying to put together a core flagship event, which is totally understandable. We were very happy to get the breather anyway, so no problems there. I'm sure that when we do have the in-person events, that DTS is still a core part of that DBEI Build Week, whatever we're calling it, probably call it the same thing. But we don't really have any agile plans just yet. We're all still kind of on our summer break.
Yeah. No, I get it. I guess one of the questions I have thinking about the bigger topic of the DTS, Design Technology Summit, like what have you thought were some of the big takeaways that you've experienced? I mean, I'm sure I don't want to say like there's one overarching one, but I'm sure each event kind of has something special about it that has been a big takeaway for you, especially as kind of on the organization side of it. I'm sure there's things that you never expected to happen, but on the other level, like, this went kind of how we planned it. So what are some of the big takeaways for you guys as the organizational group behind it that you've really felt have been successful coming out of that, and for the attendees that came and contributed and participated?
I can think of a couple of things offhand, and this kind of spans the lifespan to date. DTS, it started off just as much of a pure support group and eventing. Actually, we used to have a session there called the airing of grievances. Yeah. It was like our starting session.
Nice.
Where everybody would just kind of get it out of their system.
That's before the feats of strength, right?
Yes. Okay. Yes, of course. Before the feats of strength. Yeah, no. So we get that all out of our system, and then we would kind of dive in and have those conversations. So
commiseration session.
Not to beat this point, to a pulp, but I really like that idea of camaraderie in the room, and the idea of that sort of collaboration. Even if we all know that we're in some ways, competing with each other. Architecture firms are there, other engineering firms, or whatever. But the idea is that without giving any secret sauce away, we can all help each other. Mm-hmm. We're all professionals. We all have problems, and we're all looking to improve practice in the built environment. So that's something that I find really heartening. I really do enjoy the evolution of DTS, where before we've really started to develop themes around each event. So we have a larger idea, and then we have a series of, we explore those in subcategories. Also, that ability to approach it from a sort of a multi-perspective approach. So think about this as a project designer. Mm-hmm. Think about this question. Think about your response in the way a project designer would answer it. Think about it in the way that a junior level architect who's a year out of school may answer this. Probably two different responses. Maybe not. But the idea is to sort of stretch that conversation and make it diverse that way. I think I derive a great deal of personal satisfaction out of that. I think a lot about career paths. I think anybody who's worked in the intersection of architecture and technology, where there hasn't been defined career paths, I've had plenty of conversations with plenty of people about that. Certainly my personal hope is that DTS can be a venue where one can explore, where there are a bunch of people thinking about their career paths in areas where they aren't particularly predefined we can sort of forge our own way in developing this sort of empathic level, understanding technology as a means to an end, and looking to further more advanced positions, whether it's in a firm or elsewhere.
Yeah, kind of navigating that together, definitely.
Exactly.
I think one of the things that I appreciate about it as well, and I don't think we've touched on this yet, but it's very different than going to a lab session at Built or at AU or a panel discussion or a presentation. I mean, it's very interactive. It forces you to contribute. You can't hide in the DTS room. So
you can't.
You can't. And I like that because you get so many perspectives and so many experiences. It's a very diverse room. I mean, that's hard to say, right? It's hard to say. For me, you probably know more about it than I do, but it is diverse. It's diverse in gender. It's diverse in backgrounds. It's diverse in race. It's diverse in all kinds of ways. And I think that there's definitely a feeling in that room of, okay, I've got to participate. Because each table kind of brings something to the larger group wide conversations that, that common awkwardness of who's going to be the presenter of the information that we all discussed is very real. But that aside, they are fantastic conversations, and a lot of really good information comes out of those. Do you guys do anything to push that out to the audience in a larger way, or is it just strictly held to the group of people who attend?
That's a good question. I will say, normally I say it's a good question when I don't know the answer, but I do know the answer to this. We've tried in various ways to extend the value in the room beyond the room. And that's taken a couple of different forms. In the early years of DTS, we were organized into 3 groups, one of which was the management group, which I was the leader of. And this question that we keep talking about, sort of how the group is organized, whether it's billable, report to, we focused on the idea of deliverables as outcomes from this conversation, so that people could really bring something back to the office and say, okay, here's an encapsulation of what we discussed. Here's some value. First of all, because we thought it would help, and not unselfishly. Second of all, because we wanted people to come back, and it's much easier to justify a return if they have something to show for it and can talk about how beneficial it was, rather than we spend a day and a half in a room talking about this stuff, which is great, but it's hard to make the argument with that as the basis of your argument. So one of the deliverables that we put together a number of years ago was centered around these conversations. So we kind of honed in on whether design technologists should be billable or overhead. And of course, there's all sorts of conversations around the department they live in, they're chargeable to projects, and to what degree, and is training part of that or not. So we had a number of rich discussions around it. And the deliverable form that it ended up taking was an op-ed style article. So I thought it would be fun if we structured it in that way. So we basically had, I didn't really think about this, but we were assuming personas back then as well. So we had persona A, which was design technologists should always be billable. They should always be on projects, and they should always be billable.
This is your provocative statement. Yeah,
exactly. Provocative statement, hoping to get a rise out of somebody, just hoping to sort of get their brain engaged and thinking about it. And we wrote an article from that opinion's perspective. And then on the other side of the column, we had persona B that said, no, they should always be overhead. Mm-hmm. And here are all the reasons why. Just in the same way that, you used to read an op-ed section and you'd have, one question, and the yes person was on the left and the no person was on the right. You would read both of them. You come to your own conclusions. Right. So that's how we structured it. We thought it'd be a fun read for that. So that was maybe one of our first deliverables, one of our first takeaways. And we were fortunate enough that the folks at Design Intelligence took an interest in it, and they published it in their quarterly publication, which was fantastic. I'm still really grateful for them to do that. Some years, we've every year we do transcripts, and then take them, we edit them, we parse them, we try to make them into something a little bit more digestible than simply a transcript of conversations.
I don't even know how that is possible, because I watch them type, and it's like there's 5 people talking at once, and how? Yeah.
That's why we pay professionals to
You're
do
right.
it.
They're good at
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
We learned that the money that we pay the professionals is well worth it. Yeah, and then the committee reviews it. We just make sure that the tone's right, and all that. And to be honest with you, the folks that are doing the transcriptions, they're not subject matter experts,
right.
About what's going on in the room. So we just make sure that everything's
sure.
kind of combed over just right. We distribute those to the attendees so that they can bring that back to the office and sort of work on that. I think for the last 2 sessions with slightly more structured events beyond just initial conversations, I had been developing a series of handouts, certainly for last year, like the slide decks with the provocative statements and the role descriptions. We've provided those for folks to bring back to their practice, and I would love it. It's not up to me, but if someone can find some use for those things, and in practice, or if they wanted to make a lunch and learn out of it and do a little exercise in the office, perhaps with similar questions or using a similar approach, I think that'd be great. But it's not up to me. It's totally fine. The idea is that we're giving folks some resources to take outside of the room to be able to bring back to their practice, as well as the outcome of the conversations. I don't think we did transcripts this year, but it's still very much part of the plan, so that you have a record of it and do with it what you will.
You do it. That's what you use AI for now. You hook up the bot to Zoom, and it transcribes the Zoom call, and boom, done. I think it's that was always a deliverable that we had internally, was anybody who goes to these conferences, the company's paying for you to go. Now come back, and you don't have to present everything, but you need to present something. So pick a topic that adds value to the day-to-day of, some number of people in the firm. And I always found that there's some people who wait till the very last minute to put those together, and they just end up presenting what, the slide deck that the person did. But the people who are really serious about it actually took their own stab at presenting the key takeaways and some really important things to get this, to start a communication thread, right? Not just, again, create a one-way presentation, but create a dialogue about it.
Right.
That, to me, is a very successful way to help this stuff live on within the individual firms that the information gets back to.
I mean, I will tell you, I would love, I'm usually so wound up by the end of these sessions. Oftentimes I'm one of the conversation facilitators.
Mm-hmm.
Some years I've been not the only conversation facilitator, but some years there's 1 or 2 facilitators, and some years we have more. And back to your earlier point, if I see somebody in the corner of the room and they're not responding, I will go pick on them.
They're doing
email. You're right.
Yeah.
there are no silent people in the room. At least when I'm facilitating the conversation.
It's a lot of work.
Get it up. So I'm usually pretty wound up by the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually pretty jazzed about the conversation and relieved that it's over and all that. But of course, I have all these thoughts going on in my head, and I'm like, man, I can't wait to get back and look at this material and add to it, and do all these great things. But
You're
as
fried.
you mentioned, I have a day job.
Yeah.
So this is like the thing that I do, in addition to that. So, and
you've just described my podcast, Robert.
There you go. So, all of us, on the committee are the same way. We come, we do our follow-up meeting after the event, and we're all bursting with ideas. But then, none of us have a lot of time, and we just all spent it, in the lead up and the preparation. So, I will say, one thing that I wish that we could do better, and that I hope we can do better, maybe through AI, is to turn around those deliverables a little more quickly than we have in the past. I would love to be able to get it to people sooner, so that momentum doesn't get lost. But there are only so many hours in the day. So.
There are realities, and it is very rewarding, right? Like you said, you come away with so many ideas, and the gears are turning, and you're exhausted. Like there's the reality of that day job and that brick wall that you're about to hit again. And that's too bad. I mean, honestly, that everybody deals with that with conferences. You go to these conferences, you get inspired, you're invigorated, you're challenged. There's so many really valuable things that people take away from conferences. And there's that harsh reality on the other side. And running the event, I mean, I've done that as well. And facilitating is difficult work. I mean, you kind of get just that runner's high kind of a feel, like you're in it, you're doing it, and it's flowing. And then, man, you really hit that wall afterward, and it took a lot out of you. You didn't realize it, but your spirit was strong, but then it needs to rest.
Yeah. There are plenty of times where we finish the sessions and we go straight into the post day drinks, and then we have dinner and stuff. But there have been plenty of times where I will literally just go retreat back to my room, and I will sit there in complete silence. I will just sit. I won't move. I won't do anything. I will sit there in complete silence for at least 20 minutes. And just
good meditative state there, because you need it so bad.
That's it. I'm like, I have not spoken all day. Right. I'm going to sit here and not speak.
not spoken.
Exactly.
Well, I encourage everybody who's hearing this to check out DTS. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. But I think it's worth looking at, especially if you're interested in the types of conversations that we've been talking about on this episode. I can't understate, or I can't overstate, I don't know the right word there, the value that I've taken away from those conversations, even though it only comes once a year, if that. Not really counting the COVID related ones that happened at different times. But I kudos to you and the team putting that together. I think it really is valuable across the entire industry, and it should be recognized as such. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk about it. It's certainly not just me. Well, thank you very much, Evan. It's certainly not just me. I really have to thank everyone on the committee. We've got, for those of you that don't know, the DTS committee is chaired by Robert Manna, who's at Stantec. We also have Vicki Harris from HKS, Brad Novak from Catch Partners, Chris Warden from Trainer HL, Craig Barbieri from and am I missing anybody? I hope I'm not missing anybody. We're always missing somebody.
Oh, man. I'm going to get into so much trouble if I miss somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this wasn't a prepared question, so
no, it was not. And I should have made sure that I had that on the top of my head. But it's really a group effort, and we all have day jobs. We're all super busy, and we all really support each other. I love being able to. I mean, in some ways, it's just like design. Some of us, we brainstorm ideas for what we want the theme to be that year. We kind of occasionally I'll break off with one or two of the folks, and we kind of develop a little bit more. We noodle, we bring it back to the group. We kind of stretch it into a day-long theme. We develop some subsections. We do all this. It's really, really a group effort. I come up with half-cooked ideas, and then everybody shoots them down, legitimately so, and then forces me to make them a little more robust and a little more useful. They come back with other ideas, and it's just it's a really great group to work with. I really enjoy working with everybody, and all of DBEI, including Wes. Wes couldn't be more supportive of the group either. So, many thanks to him as well.
Yeah, Mr. Wesley Bean. Yep, good people. That's a great group. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk about this today, and I appreciate you sharing that here, because it does deserve a look for sure, and you guys are doing a valuable thing. So I will put links to all of this stuff into the show notes. Is there any other links or places where people can follow along online with what's going on with you and DTS and DBEI?
Generally, I post everything on my LinkedIn page, Robert Yori, because that's my name.
I'll put a link to that as well.
I have a Twitter account, which occasionally, I tend to use it in spurts. I won't touch it for months, and then I'll retweet a whole bunch of stuff, usually around the time we start publicizing for DTS. And then, of course, the DBEI page and the event pages, which hopefully I can send you the links, and maybe you can.
That'd be fantastic.
Your notes as well.
I will. Yeah. Well, thanks again. This has been a fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Kevin, thanks so much. I really always enjoy talking with you, podcast or not, and I can't wait to see you somewhere again, hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. This show is part of the Gable Media Podcast Network. You can see all the shows at gablemedia.com. That's GABLMEDIA.com. You can help support what I'm doing here by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and help get the word out, and of course, share it with your friends. I'd love to hear from you, so leave a comment on the website at trxl.co/podcast, where you can find every episode. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. Just search for eTroxel. Talk to you soon.